Welcome to the podcast of the Public Education Foundation.
I'm Zhan Okuda-Lim, Resident Fellow with the Leadership Institute of Nevada. I'm here today with Dr. Karen Mapp, who is a senior lecturer in education at the Harvard Graduate School of Education, and also the faculty director of the Education Policy and Management Program, and one of my former professors when I was at the education school. So Dr. Mapp, it's great to see you again here in Las Vegas.
Great to see you too.
So you've done tremendous work throughout your career as a researcher and as a practitioner in the realm of family and community engagement. And recently, you and your colleagues have developed a new revised version 2 of your dual capacity building framework for schools to partner with families, partner with community, and bring them in collaboration with the work of schools and the work of educators. So take us through some of the new highlights of the dual capacity building framework and the inspiration for the changes that you've been working on in that framework.
Okay, great. Thank you. So the first dual capacity building framework for family school partnerships was developed in 2013 and launched in 2014. And the framework was designed to be a tool for practitioners to use to design effective practice in family engagement. And so the first version identified some factors that we called opportunity conditions that had to be put in place in order for schools to cultivate really robust partnerships with families that supported student learning and school success. So after the launch in 2014, what I did was right then and there, because I believe in continuous improvement, I started to collect data on how people were using the framework and then asking them, if you were able to rewrite the framework, what are some of the things that you would do differently? And then including the sort of qualitative data I was collecting through informal and sometimes formal interviews with teachers and school leaders and policymakers, people at the state level who use the framework to design their state policies on family engagement. In addition to that qualitative information gathering that I did, I had an opportunity to do a survey at the National Family and Community Engagement Conference in San Francisco. That was a few years back. And we used a Poll Everywhere tool to ask people to identify what worked with the framework, what would they like to see different. And what was interesting is that a lot of what came up in the Poll Everywhere survey pretty much aligned itself with a lot of the comments that I had gotten from people over the years. So some of the things that they said were that they realized, both through their practice, but also through some significant studies that have come out about the power of relationships to get our work done in groups and organizations, they felt that the condition of relationship building had to be really prevalent in the new framework. They also felt that there needed to be some language in the effective conditions to build partnerships about cultural responsiveness and being respectful to families who have different cultural backgrounds. They also wanted the impact of the leader to be more prominent in the framework. So in the organizational conditions, we now talk about leadership really has to see family engagement as a systemic strategy for school success. So once we took in all those elements from both the survey and then from the qualitative information that I had gathered, we started to think about what would a new framework look like. So for those of you, for your listeners, if you want to see the new framework, we actually have a website that was developed by two of my doctoral students, Ayel Bergman and Marissa Alberti, and it's www.dualcapacity.org. And you'll see the new framework, you'll see the explanation for the changes that were made to the framework, and then also an explanation of some of the new elements, what they're about and why they're there.
And so many important points there, especially the importance of trust and relationship building with families as partners in the work, and the importance of not separating family engagement from instructional and educational practice, but but seeing family and community engagement as essential to good education systems and to good instructional practice in the school building. And as we're talking about this topic here about family and community engagement, throughout the leadership academies, one of the questions that many of our participants will ask throughout different courses is, it's great to talk about ideas and programs, but how exactly does that look in practice? And what you've done with our executive leadership academy participants the last few days is both talk about these high-level ideas in terms of the dual capacity building framework, but you yourself just mentioned, and you've shared this with our participants, what you've seen out in the field as you've traveled across the country, as you've met with educators and families and school leaders. So tell us some examples, or maybe a particular highlight of a school or a system where they're doing the work and they're putting these great ideas into practice for the benefit of the school community.
So with the old dual capacity building framework, we wrote a companion piece called Partners in Education. And again, I believe in including my students whenever I'm doing my research. So Paul Kuttner, who's now a professor himself, or actually he works at one of the colleges and universities in Utah. We wrote this piece that helped to explain the elements of the framework. And the way we did that, we also included case studies of schools and other organizations that we thought highlighted aspects of the framework. So we're going to do that again with the new framework. And one of the schools that we are going to be featuring in the new framework narrative is a school in Rhode Island. It's in Central Falls, Rhode Island, called the Learning Community. And this is a school that has embraced family and community engagement as one of its core foundational elements. It's in their DNA. And so everything they do at the school takes families into account. So, for example, the co-director of the school, Sarah Friedman, asked us to come and visit, and she said, "You'll have to be here for the opening of school." And it's actually now, I think the school goes up to 8th grade. My mind is a little fuzzy today because I've been teaching all day. But when the school opens up in the morning, the families come in and they don't just drop their kids off at the school door. They drop their kids off at the door of the classroom. And so teachers greet the families, there's hugs, and how are you? When you walk into the building, there's this wonderful family center right in the front of the building. There's tables and coffee and I think a computer. It's bright, and the office is right across from that. And you really see families being embraced as full partners. The other thing that we noticed was that the families also come in at the end of the day and do the same thing. They go directly to the classroom, and that it really cultivates this dialogue with families. Families are a part of decision making. In fact, families are a part of the professional development sessions that happen at the school. So we talked to some of the teachers who told us that in the summer, when they have their PD, they most look forward to the days the families are going to be there. And families are involved in not only delivering the PD, but also being a part of the learning. So families are actually delivering portions of it. So you see, they really take family engagement into account in everything that they do. And this is a school that performs at or above the level of many of the suburban district schools in Rhode Island. So that's just a small example. When they interview people to come into the school, they ask them, what's your philosophy of family engagement? How do you work with families? And they're expecting to hear that that person sees families through an asset-based lens and not a deficit lens. Sarah talks about how if the person says, well, these poor families in this neighborhood, I don't expect them to be engaged and they probably don't value education. She called it a pens down moment.
Wow.
Where that's the end of the interview. And they actually explain to the person why that's the end of the interview. That's just not their philosophy of how they work with families. So we're going to feature them in a rural community-based organization in Iowa, in Marshalltown, Iowa. And also, I believe we're going to be talking about Washoe to talk about some of the work that the former superintendent did there.
I mean, just those narratives are so powerful in terms of how school communities can not only talk about oh, we love to engage our families, but it's part of, as you said, it's part of their DNA. They make it part of their DNA in terms of the staff, the attitudes, the mindsets, even spatially, having spaces on the school community that welcome families. I want to encourage our listeners to go to www.dualcapacity.org to check out more of the great work and details about the new version 2 of the Dual Capacity Building Framework for Family and Community Engagement. And Dr. Mapp, thank you again so much for joining us here in Las Vegas and for spending time with our education leaders. It's always great to welcome you here to town.
And it's always great to see you because you're the reason why I do what I do, is to have my students take on these positions and do this wonderful work. So it's pretty heartwarming to be interviewed by you today.
Oh, thank you so much, Dr. Mapp. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.